As we come into the presence of the divine, I just ask you to join us all in prayer. We give thanks for a boy, one of Bellevue's treasures, Corey, now a man, using his giftedness to bring people from many places to his home for this event, where we witness the collective giftedness at the final step on this journey of the group. We give thanks for all quilters and artists, crafters, authors, who generously offer their creations to the world. We give thanks for all organizers of this event who worked so hard to make it all possible. We give thanks for the power of healing hands, the many hands that have touched this quilt in many ways, in its creation, in its hard work, and its revealing here today. We ask your blessings on all those gathered here as we bring attention to the tragedy endured by our Indigenous sisters, mothers, grandmothers, who witness our support, love, and hope to the Indigenous people of our country. We ask that you bring justice to all nations, tolerance for each other, and help us to know that no one is less than, no one is unworthy. Let us understand that respect is what will make us one. And so we remember our Indigenous sisters today, those who cannot be here. Let them know, because we know that soul to soul, they can feel our energy. They will know that we are gathering here in this little community, in this little church up on the hill. So Lord, we just ask you all of this in the name of Jesus, your Son. Amen.
We extended some invitations, albeit late, to our local MP and our member of the House of Assembly here in Newfoundland, as well as some local medias. I think Corey already had an interview this morning with the CBC. And I guess, you know, when things like this are being put together, you think of some things and other things kind of go by the wayside. But anyway, nonetheless, we received some greetings from our Member of Parliament, Mr. Terence Rogers, and he says, "Thank you so much for the invitation to attend your trunk show and quilt exhibit. I was extremely honoured you folks took the time to think of me. Being the Member of Parliament for Bonavista, Bjorn and Trinity, I always look forward to spending time with those I represent, especially at such a unique and significant event. Unfortunately, as much as I would have liked to have been here with you due to the prior commitment, I am unable to join you, so please accept my apologies. I would like to congratulate the Bellevue Recreation along with John and Jackie Ralph, great thanks need to go out to John and Jackie, for organising this event. I commend each artist for their dedication of their time and commitment into creating the Covenant to Speak Their Names quilt being revealed here today. Not only is this a symbolic work of art, but also a piece that will help raise awareness for such an important cause, missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. It is everybody's hope that we will someday have a society where everyone can live without fear and be accepted no matter what their heritage may be. I would also like to congratulate the local quilters whose quilts are being displayed here, and we have a magnificent history. I think the oldest quilt here is 90 years old. I am certain that they are all great works of art, and they are. Again, thank you for the invitation and sincere congratulations to all organizers and participants. Well done, Terence Rogers. And Mr. Dwyer also sent an email, which never got printed off, but he sent an email in the same thing. We only invited him yesterday. And I mean, you know, Newfoundland got big geography, he's down Bjorn somewhere. So he just sent his well wishes as well to the group and to Corey and his contingent. And we feel as a small community, this is a big deal.
So before I talk about the quilt and how it all started, I'm going to ask Kim Caskey to come forward. Kim was one of the members that participated in the quilt. She's a long arm quilter based in Alberta, and she did the final quilting on the piece.
I didn't know
2 seconds ago that I was going to be asked to say this, so bear with me. Yes, I am Kim, and I am a very proud Albertan, and I am very proud of our new Albertan boy. We're not getting him back. Gary and I have been friends for a very long time, and when he talked about his vision for this particular quilt, this particular project, you know, it's one that perhaps many of us have thought about. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do to help this issue? And so when he asked me to quilt it for him, you know, my first thought is, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't possibly bring it justice. Oh, that's too much pressure. But I thought it's about the participation. It's about making the effort. And I was overwhelmed with the emotion that I felt even working on it, even just quilting on it, thinking about the women and the children and the issue. And so my hope is that this opens a conversation around the world, hopefully starting in Canada, starting in Newfoundland, and that you know, we can all do whatever we can to bring some light to this issue.
So a big part of the project and how this all started, the little quilt guild that I'm a member of in Whitecourt, Alberta, they were doing a quilt show 6 years ago, and a lady by the name of Carol Connolly, she had a smaller piece. It was about 60 inches square, and it was very modern. So for the quilters in the room, it was very modern, very abstract. And so without reading her artist statement, you know, we were kind of, it's a cool quilt, but no one really knew what it was truly about until you read the artist statement. And, you know, it was a circle of figures with a T-piece, and it was her missing a word, the Indigenous women quilt. And so for me, it was like, up until that point, it really wasn't a part of my consciousness that this was even an issue. It wasn't, we weren't hearing it in the news, we weren't seeing it in newspapers, it wasn't a part of the discussion at all in Alberta. And so what really hit home was when I started working for the government of Alberta in a contract, and every morning I'd park my truck and I'd walk past multiple Indigenous, disenfranchised, you know, lots of them looking like they had a very bad life. And so that really piqued even more interest. And so then I started digging. It's like, well, how many are there? Is there a list? Is there a registry? And the more I dug, the less I could find. So there was nothing documented. CBC had put out a list of names that were recorded. And at that time, there were about 300 on the list, and that was national. And through the research that I've done since 2015, we've got a list now of just over 3,200 people. And what I've learned through this whole process is that the families that have their girls and their mothers and sisters and all of that gone, they're embarrassed and they're ashamed and they're not, because these girls will leave the reserves and they might be addicted to drugs, or they might have gotten pregnant, or, you know, in the drug trade or in the sex trade, and families were embarrassed, and so they would go missing and they wouldn't even be reported. So getting back to the quilt, as I started going through ideas about it and for it, and this one, it was it was this big when I first seen her fingers going over the keyboard up there. And so I mustered up the courage to message her and say, this is where we're headed, this is what we want to do. Can you write something for me? And in a split second, it was an absolute yes. and we started, you know, sending text messages back late at night often, and you know, what was the result was 14 stanzas that really talks the first 7, the voice of the girls, and the last 7 that makes the promise, or makes the covenant, what we need to do. So I'd like to call Rosalind up to read her poem, and then we'd like to do the unveiling.
The Covenant. We lie beneath the cold, dark clay, in forests thick and green, sun no longer touching our face, hidden to never be seen, taken from our many places, cut short in dreams and plans, never more to be seen or heard in this our native land. We lie as mothers, daughters all, sisters of heart and soul. While dimensions speak to our future, we watch as the story unfolds. Ancestors gather in circles round, with drumming and whistles fine. Calling to all to speak our names, we now follow this powerful sign. As warriors of our people stand, a silent promise now must keep. In life justice was denied, as now in death we sleep. Women less than, unworthy, not equal to sisters there. Where was the promise of freedom, dignity, equality, and care? Will no one hear our voices still? Feel the anguish of our cry? Or we see the promise of your response, red dresses hang on branches high. You have been heard now, dear ones. Your legacy marches on. In a land of better tomorrows, women proudly greet the dawn, where mysteries no longer reign and day chases out the night. Safety all around us, and all will be set right. Names written now forever, this quilt of hope will be, a monument of fabric to your life, a tribute to your memory, made forever to tell your story. This promise now made to you, to hold you in the hearts of all, First Nations, proud and true. A reminder to all who mourn, forgotten you will not be. Now safe with the elders you wander, in awe of all you see. And so all who gaze upon it, let this quilt raise its thunderous voice, to speak for women everywhere. Let this covenant be your choice. This quilt, a sacred mantra, will bring warmth and unity to the lives of women and girls lost for all eternity.
So that's what I had to work with. No pressure at all, and it was my idea. So in terms of the participants in making the quilt, you know, obviously I spearheaded it, but I couldn't have done it without my team of people across the country. And so Rosalind, of course, her and I worked together initially, and then based on what I just depicted to her in terms of what I envisioned for the quilt and the stories, she created the poem, and that became really the focal point for the borders. So the poem is actually embroidered on the sides of the poem, or on the sides of the quilt. And that was done by one of our local quilters, a part of our guild in Edmonton, Sheila Jones. So Sheila did all of the embroidery. And then for the rest of the majority of the piecing, I did myself, but I didn't do that without consultation with members of the First Nations communities. And so, you know, in the eyes of recognizing cultural appropriation and, you know, all of the issues that come around with, you know, potentially as the white guy being stolen or, you know, being accused of stealing another culture's identity, I really wanted the Indigenous cultures to be a part of this. And so a number of consultations occurred. You know, that's when I was hearing the stories about my sister or my mom, or, you know, I was constantly hearing that. And so then when the quilt was finally done, we essentially had done classes in BC on Haida art. And so just going and learning about all of the different symbols and what each of those symbols mean, I was able to create 2 different Haida that represent what we wanted to get from the quilt. So you'll see that on there. You'll see a medicine wheel. For quilters, it's in flying geese. So you'll see a ring with the medicine circle. Feathers in First Nations cultures is incredibly important. And as the story goes, if you pick up a feather, you make a wish. If you hold on to the feather long, and so there's feathers on the quilt for that. I worked with a beading artist, and unfortunately, this is about 99% finished. When it finally hangs, there's some pieces that I wasn't going to bring to Newfoundland, and I'll tell you about and describe what that's going to look like. But essentially, the center of the quilt was meant to be a dream catcher, and the dream is that we don't have this issue anymore. And the poetry that's on the sides tells the story, tells us what we need to do. You know, tells us what's happened, what needs to be done. Working with the special victims and historical investigation team with the Edmonton Police Service, they've been sentinel in documenting these women. And you know, without their help, we wouldn't have the list that will be on the quilt. And then in terms of the ornamentation and the full vision of this, it's, if you imagine a dream catcher, the circle, all of the ornaments, the ribbons falling off and the feathers and everything, that part's not done. But the entire piece will be held by a bow above the quilt, dream catcher being held, and that will be the finished piece. So I've been asked 150 million times where this is going. And the Governor General of Canada is the first Indigenous woman to hold that post. So she's getting this quilt. So we're going to do the unveiling. For the quilters in the group, this has not been blocked. It's still pretty frilly. We've used linen, and the linen is used because I wanted the representation of TP and, you know, just that natural fiber. There's some really some hand-dyed wool on here, hand-dyed fabrics from one of my mentors, Ricky Timms. Yeah, there's just been a lot of thought into this, and I'm very proud to share it. So I'm not sure how we're going to do this. Dad gave me now for all of you folks that are on the quilt tour with us this week, I have a lobster pot lat to flick the back of the tablecloth over. So yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to work. Just a little bit about the finer details of it. So you have the medicine wheel in the four traditional colors. The Haidas I created. Each one of these symbols mean a certain thing, and when collectively put together, a fish is the sustenance that they would need to come home. The feathers, of course, as I mentioned, it's their wish feathers. The Haida here is the mother's waiting for them to come to return. The background fabric for the the Northern Lights. I tried piecing it, I tried painting it, I tried all sorts of things. And it wasn't, and I just couldn't get the right, it just wasn't right. And so I went to my good friend Adobe Publisher and created the sky fabric and had it printed at Swoon Flower with the whole purpose that I wanted the spirit to be threaded and thread painted over top. And I think this is the part that Kim was the most fearful about doing that. And then of course, this was inspired by that the original quilt that I saw 6 years ago at the quilt show in Whitecourt, Alberta. So of course the red representing the red dress, but this also in this particular piece represents the mothers that are home waiting and the girls that have no idea where they are, and that's why they're back on. We don't see their faces because right now they're blind. They are completely faceless to us. That needs to be fixed. Yeah, and then of course you have Rosalind's beautiful poem and the Canadian maple leaves. This was part of the course that I did, and it really doesn't have any major significance other than it's a Canadian issue. So the Haidas in that particular case just kind of incorporate some of the different components to it. So that is my piece.